Today we're going to do a very simple watercolor painting using these four colors: raw umber, Prussian blue. You could also use an Antwerp blue or another dark blue, yellow ochre. It's kind of a goldeny yellow, and a burnt sienna or sepia tone. Here are those paints on my palette. So this is the ochre, this is the blue, the sienna or sepia, and then the raw umber, just a basic brown. And we're going to do a simple sea and sky scene, just kind of help you learn to do some simple things, and to do it quickly is kind of the key with this. So you're going to use mostly this 1-inch flat brush. So I have my water. A key thing with this is you're going to go get your paper wet. So you're going to have to tear a piece of paper out of your pad. So I have it laying on newspaper here. You're going to get that piece of paper nice and wet, and then you're going to come in and start working. We're going to put in some of this yellow ochre first. So I'm going to get my brush wet, and I'm going to grab some of this yellow ochre. It's just a nice golden color. It makes our page nice and warm. Oh, sorry. Before you get it wet, you're going to run a pencil line about 1/3 of the way down. I used a straight edge to make your horizon, a little bit of seagrass, and a curve for the slope of the shore. Let me show you a picture of the basic painting we are doing. We're going to do something like this. So to get started, after you've got all that ready, you've got your paint wet. And so this is wet on wet, and we're just going to run some color through. We're not painting the whole thing a solid color. Think of how the sky looks on any given day. We do want a bit of this yellow ochre pretty much everywhere. So I watered that down after I got this base in, because I want it to be lighter. So I'm putting it just about everywhere. What this does is it gives us this nice warm background. So I'm putting just a tad in all this. You can barely see it. I'm going to put a little more. So see, I'm also running my brush sideways to get that color in. Okay. And then down in this area, I'm going to let it be a little darker, because that's where the grasses are. Now, you don't want a lot of pencil, because you're going to want to need to be able to color those or cover those pencil lines later. So this is supposed to be quick, like literally seconds. Add a little more water down here to get this kind of the way I want it. I think a little more color through here. Maybe a little more through here. And that's it. Now we're not waiting for this to dry to go on. I'm just going to now, I have a little yellow ochre on my brush. That's fine. You can even see where some drips hit my Prussian blue. So I'm just gonna grab some of that now. A little more water. It's a fairly dark blue. Get myself some water on there. I'm going to grab a little bit with that tip, and I'm going to start up here in the corner, and I'm going to start thinking about how would those clouds look. So I'm just going to kind of, and this again, this has to be quick, because if you sit here and mess around too much, you're just going to have a green sky. A little bit of a greenish tint is okay, but if you just work and work and work, everything's going to turn the same color. So you've just got to get in there and get a feel for it, and go. So I'm going to run in, put some dark up in here. And then, see, I've got some green there. I'm now going to pull some down into here. Kind of trying to think cloud-like, okay? And see, remember from our work with wet on wet before, you're going to get some beautiful blending of color. I'm going to put a little blue down in here. I'm gonna get this whole lower area is gonna be more of that watered down blue. Let some of that feed up into that sky. I'm gonna get over this grass area and down into here. So I've got a nice background. Kind of liking this. This is a little bit different, so I'm gonna add a little more intense blue into that. Notice I'm just trying to push these colors around. I'm liking what I'm getting through here. If you don't like it, you can drip a bit of water in to change that. Look a little more cloud-like than it did before. Alrighty. Still might want a bit more darkness up in here. Notice how if I stop in the middle, I get a puddle. So I kind of need to just kind of keep moving. So I haven't set a timer, but this is probably not even a full minute. Alrighty, see now I stopped there, I got a puddle. I'm gonna pull that on over. I don't want that puddle. Okay, I think that sky is looking about how we need it to look. Actually, I keep telling you that, and then I go back in. See this weird line here? I'm not sure that's entirely sky-like. So I'm gonna add a little more through there. Alrighty, I think that'll do it. All right, now, dry off my brush. Now I can come in. I am still gonna not quite put in this water yet because it's still pretty wet there up on this edge. So I'm gonna let that sit a bit, but I can come over here with some darker color and add in the dunes and some more shadows down there. So to do this, I'm going to add a little bit of my burnt umber. Not burnt umber, I'm sorry. It was raw umber that we were using. And we're gonna add a little bit of yellow ochre into that too. And it's gonna make a nice orangey brown kind of color. And so that is gonna give me the washy area for my dunes. So these sand dunes over here need to come down and they need to kind of come across this front area. As again, I'm still using that brush. I'm gonna try and hit that pencil line because I want that pencil line to disappear behind the color. So I'm gonna definitely make sure I hit that, and the blue for the water is gonna come in later. There we go. And hit that. Kind of don't like that my beautiful gold went away. Now we're just gonna kind of add in kind of what the dunes would do. They'd kind of be some shadows through here where the sand is kind of coming up and making a shadow basically. Alrighty, and then I'm also gonna add some of that darker yellow ochre that I mixed, the brown and the gold, and I'm gonna pull through this grassy bit. Now this is more of the background. We can add more details later with finer grassy lines after this is dried some more, but for now, that's all we need is just kind of a nice background. There we go. Get some more feel of the direction of those dunes coming through. A little more over here. We could get darker over here. Again, this is wet on wet, but if I just do a streak of kind of some intense color, it will just blend in with what's there, and see how it leaves. It gives you these nice occidentals of color. If I go over it several times, I'm gonna lose that. Alrighty, this is white paper, I wanna cover that. All right, so now My sky is drying. This bit is starting to dry. I am gonna take a dry paper towel, and I'm gonna hold my paper down, and I'm gonna run this across here, just so that, see, I'm getting up in that sky a tiny tad. Don't really want to do that. Let's be a little more careful with that. There. This is just a almost dry brush. It's just damp. Pull those colors back in there. Okay. The reason I did this drying bit, I didn't have to dry the whole area, but I want to put the blue in for the water, and I can't. It's going to run right up into that sky if I didn't have like a dry bit of edge to put it on. And you can notice I'm kind of drying things off now because we had it pretty wet doing this, didn't we? So you can kind of dry it up a bit if you've got a hair dryer, or if you just want to wait a little bit now, at this point is okay. Now I'm still going back to that 1-inch brush, and I'm going to get some of that straight Prussian dark blue, which it's your choice. You can just use a dark blue that's in your kit. It may not be exactly Prussian. See, it's still wanting to bleed a bit. And I am running right across that straight line. I want to make sure I've got dark blue on that line. See how it's wanting to bleed a little? I can come in later and work with that. Or you can wait till it's more dry. See, I want it good and dark. Right on that edge. This is the farthest away point of the ocean. So I'm going to get this water coming on across. All right. And then I'm going to bring in some real nice dark bits to show kind of the surface of that water running across. And then I'm going to come down and I'm going to leave some white areas around some rough blue to imply waves rolling in. And those are the white caps, see, of the waves. I'm probably going to need a little more of that Prussian blue on my page. I am out of the straight blue, and some of my yellow ochre ran into the other bit. So okay. You see what I'm doing? I'm adding in as the waves are coming up to the shore. Now this is absorbing. I'm gonna get a little more dark blue. So this is just Prussian blue. So remember, we've talked about how with watercolor, we don't add white to lighten. We add water to lighten. So the water doesn't curve, the sand dune curves. So my water needs to be straight, but I want to get that edge. So it is a little tricky putting that in. This is drying a little more. So I'm going to run a little more across. And I am going to use a little bit of clear water. Doing this at home, I recommend that you let your sky dry before you put your water in. Like I said, this is going to continue to bleed on me. So what I will end up doing is coming along here with a streak of the dark blue when the sky has dried. But for the sake of showing you in a video, this is getting faded. So again, I'm adding just some straight blue. This is straight out of the tube to get these darker shadow edges, and then the white comes up and looks like the white caps of the water. That's all I have to do there. This needs a little more. Need to water that out a bit. Remember again, water goes this way. Water is always level. So when you're going, you always go across your canvas the direction the water exists in your world that you're painting. So always go across. Water always seeks level. But then like waves can come up and down and roll. So that's why some of it you can, but see, it still goes across. I'm not going to come straight down with these marks. It still goes across the paper. Alrighty, so that's looking pretty cool. Let's move on over to our dune area again. It has dried. I feel like my paper's moved, but it hasn't. It has dried some more. So now we could come back in with more grass. So I'm going to go back to that raw umber, not burnt, raw umber, and yellow ochre. And notice I'm not fully mixing it. And I'm going to again go through like we did earlier, just a real loose. You can tell I'm pulling back from my paper so that it stays loose. Now I'm going to go another direction because it's grass and it shouldn't all go the same way. And I pull back so you can see sometimes I go and nothing even happens. That's because I'm staying away from my paper. I want it to be loose and sometimes hits, sometimes doesn't. Now I'm going to grab a little bit of this sepia or burnt sienna. Again, I'm using it straight out of the tube at that point simply because I know I have a lot of water on my paper and I know it is going to mix with what I already have down there. So now these are very lightly coming across and I can pull some across over here. Maybe there's some little short grasses coming up. It's got to start somewhere, right? Could have a little bit on the edge of the water. Okay, pull across here. There we go. Maybe a little bit more dark over here, a little of that sepia. See how now I'm using it kind of straight and it's intense color and it's almost just laying on top of that, what we did earlier. So this layering, like I said, you started with the totally wet paper and then you slowly, I'm gonna get a little more straight yellow ochre, get a little more of those gold colors through. The amount of grass you have is completely up to you. Over here, I don't like that pencil line showing. So I was putting a little more grass over there. Now I'm having a hard time getting these little, some of these little grass bits to look grassy. So I got one of my little tiny brushes out and I can make more grass like marks in some of the different colors that I've been using. And that looks pretty sand dune-y, doesn't it? Pretty simple. Now the last thing I would want to do is, like I said, my water is kind of bleeding into my sky there because it's still very wet. This. So I'm going to come in with this. I stopped juggling my brushes. Well, let's try this one. That one's across the room now. This one. I really want to put some dark blue along this edge here, but I don't want it to bleed into the sky. The sky is almost dry. So we're going to do something else real quick. We are going to cover the top half And we're gonna splatter some texture on here for the sand. But we need to cover the water because we don't want that in the water. So I'm gonna come way over here with it and cover the water. There would not be as many speckles up here, so it's okay that that's covered. And then I'm gonna get a little bit of water. I'm gonna do a little bit of the brown first. And this, I believe, is the back side. Yeah, that's the back side of something. I'm gonna just not wet enough. There we go. You hit the edge of your brush, the metal part. There we go. Okay. Now I want another color. I don't want it all the same because it's not going to look like sand if it's all the same. There we go. That's doing a little better. Got a little wetter. There we go. My face, I can feel it hitting my face. So if you looked at my face right now, my face would look like the rest. So now I've got some of this yellow ochre now, nice and wet. Maybe too much. There we go. So now, by now, I should be able to go in, carefully remove that. And there's my little splatters. A couple snuck up underneath. Don't really have sand floating in the air, do we? So I'm just gonna pull those out. There's enough blue that I can do that. And then I'm gonna take, I'll just use this one since I have it in my hand. I've got several cups of clear water that I can switch to as I'm rinsing my brush and my water. Like here, this is getting all colored with yellow ochre. If I use that, wet my brush with that and then pick up blue, I'm gonna get more green than that straight blue. So I use this clear cup to rinse my brush one more time. And I can check it on my paper towel and see if it's as clear as I need. And then I'm going to grab just a little bit more of this straight Prussian blue. My brush is just damp, just so that it carries the paint. So it's pretty straight blue here. It's not overly watered down, you can see. And then I am just going to run my hand. Notice I'm going up a little higher to cover that pencil line and where it seeped into the sky. Now, I can't really get it too good behind here, and it's best not to try. You're just going to get rid of that. Now I can grab a tiny bit of water and smooth this edge so it doesn't look like a straight line. Being careful not to introduce that wateriness into this top bit. And I kind of just want this even darker. So I'm just going to run that across there again to get it that darker. Whoop. A little bit dry brush, so I'm just going to pull that across. Remember, we don't want to overwork this and destroy what we've done down here. This is a good point too, now that this is, see, this is getting weirder. You could add a little more grass in there later if you wanted, but I'm happy with that. I think that looks pretty good. I wouldn't mind coming in with a little more of the waves down here now that it's dried a bit. I can touch it and feel that it's a little dry. If you touch it when it's kind of wet, you're gonna end up with, see how there's edges here? There's lines. I don't want that because the water doesn't have like a straight line to it unless it's the horizon line or it's where the white comes in. So this is just a brush that's dry. I'm trying to soften those edges. I'm gonna take this fan brush and again, barely get it wet. Grab some of that dark Prussian blue on the tips. And I'm gonna play again with how these wavy bits, see how I'm like coming in from the top again. It's pretty dark. So I'll be adding a little water to make it move and flood. There we go. There we go. Straight across. Straight across. Now too dark. So I'm gonna add some water. Ah, there we go. Look at that. That's doing what I want. Switch to this brush. There we go. This one too. Trying to keep this area white, the white of the paper. And then I'm going to come in from this side on this one. Okay. And then this. And then these lines are too uniform. Water wouldn't look quite that perfect. Alrighty. I think we've got ourselves a nice seascape. This is what we will do in class this week. I know we said we would finish our bowl of fruit, and you may. If you need to finish that in class, you may. And then you can also work on this because this shouldn't take the entire class time. And this is a pretty quick painting. A lot of what we've done has been projects. We haven't done a lot of full-on paintings. This one is more simple. So you should be able to get this done in a shorter amount of time in class. Even with leaving yourself some time for the line between the water and the grass, or the water in the sky, to dry. I'm going to do one more thing while I still have you, and that is I just kind of want to add, now that those grasses are kind of blending in, I've got a little more of that sepia and a dab of the yellow on this straight brush that I used. I'm holding the edge of my paper, and I'm just going to, again, just run a couple more fresh grass pieces across this top, because, and I pulled a little blue in, but that's okay. It's fine. And that gives that a little bit more detail because it's a starker line, because it's darker, and it'll stay that way. So there we go. That's pretty much it. That's our seascape.